Hello and welcome to today's session, where we're going to present the newly co-developed research ideas and actionable recommendations to address public health implications and opportunities related to extreme heat events. Those joining live will then participate in a regional breakout sessions to determine initial steps to implement prioritized agenda items for the discussions. This session is hosted by the Collaborative on Extreme Heat Events, and we're thrilled that you've taken time out of your schedules to join us this morning live or view this recording later on. My name is Resham Patel. I use she, her, they, them pronouns. I'm on faculty at the University of Washington School of Public Health and part of the leadership for the Center for Disaster Resilient Communities. An honor to serve as the co-lead for the collaborative and excited to see so many folks here and continued interest in the work ahead. Wanted to start with a land acknowledgement. I think this is particularly relevant to today's conversations as we think about how extreme heat and other climate-related extreme events in our region are tied to the lands and spaces that we occupy. The University of Washington acknowledges the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. Please feel free to add your own acknowledgements in the chat and share your names and organizations and pronouns. For those who are watching later on, we hope that this reaches the spaces where you live and occupy as well, and the work that you do where your region fits. On our next slide, I just wanted to briefly cover what the collaborative is. As many of you have heard in earlier webinars and workshops, the Collaborative on Extreme Heat Events started last year with interest from public health practitioners throughout our region who wanted to know what peer jurisdictions had experienced during the 2021 heat dome and subsequent calls for action and response. More importantly, they wanted to learn and partner on what it meant for their climate change and health programs moving forward. As someone who only recently shifted from practice to academia, I know how important these partnerships can be and how infrequently they're prioritized. So University of Washington Center for Disaster Resilient Communities partnered with those practitioners to design a project based on these ideas. And with support from Urban at UW's Research to Action Collaboratory, the project was launched in summer of 2023. And while the name of the collaborative and the activities led over the past year call out extreme heat, it's the hope of the project team to be establishing partnerships and encouraging action on climate change and health beyond extreme heat alone. On our next slide, I want to acknowledge the dedicated planning group of partners from King County, Washington, Multnomah County, Oregon, and Vancouver, BC regions, along with the University of Washington that convened and have regularly met throughout the year to co-design the project activities. Just really want to thank the folks here on the slide and many of their colleagues as well for their incredible leadership in co-designing and guiding this year's activities. We truly would not be here today without them. And over the year, the collaborative network building itself has been growing. We're grateful that you've all accepted invitations from your regional colleagues to participate today and in other ways. We welcome you into the collaborative. So on the next slide, our short-term goals of this collaborative were to encourage peer sharing of challenges and innovations and to establish a network of broad range of transdisciplinary partners that we know are critical to the success of this work. And while public health practitioners help launch this project, we know that it'll take a number of partners and perspectives from a range of sectors and disciplines across academia, practice, and community to be successful. So we're delighted that many of those perspectives are represented here today and have been participating in activities throughout the year. We're eager to show how we can continue to grow as we move forward. And today we'll present a co-developed list of actionable recommendations and research agenda for the future. I personally am excited to see how we can collaborate on these ideas. I'm committed to making sure that practice and community perspectives continue to drive this work. On the next slide, I just want to cover a few of the activities over the last year. So as many of you know, we hosted a 4-part webinar series, the first of which practitioners shared their unique perspectives based on the shared incident of the 2021 heat dome in our region. Then we dug deeper on how this incident intersects with 3 key topics that were determined by the planning committee and others: early warning, built environment, and community partnerships. These all have significant implications for future extreme heat events, as well as applications to climate change and health more broadly. You can find all of these on the website, so we hope that you viewed them and will continue to share with anyone in your network that's interested in this type of collaborative work. Following the webinars, we hosted a half-day workshop where transdisciplinary partners from all 3 regions engaged in facilitated discussions to co-develop the action and research agenda that you'll hear about today. So, without further ado, and to share more about the April workshop and the results from the robust discussion, I'll turn it over to Ashley Moore, the talented doctoral student that's been working closely with the collaborative all year and has been leading the way in analyzing and synthesizing the draft of the report and for soliciting and incorporating feedback from members of the planning committee of all three regions represented here today. Ashley, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Resham. So I will start by talking a little bit about the workshop, what we did there more specifically, and then I'll go into the results of the workshop report. And you'll have maybe seen, or you will see, that the workshop report is quite detailed and kind of lengthy. So I won't go over every single result. It'll be more of a high-level overview of the big topics and some examples within each topic. So as Resham mentioned, we invited folks from practice, academia, and community organizations to this workshop. And folks had expertise in climate and health, in housing, sustainability, communications, at-risk populations. There was a really wide range of experience among the participants. And as you kind of just heard, we did a little overview of the collaborative to kind of kick off the meeting. And then the bulk of the meeting was this World Cafe style breakout discussion. So this is a small group facilitation method where people discuss, each group discusses structured questions, and folks are intentionally mixed or combined between each round to ensure diverse discussions for the questions. So for our first round, people were grouped by sector. So everyone within each group was in the same kind of field or sector. And we asked two questions in this round. The first one is, what innovations related to extreme heat do you want to implement? So these are sort of dream changes that people had in mind. And then the second question is more about the resources to accomplish those. So if you're lacking resources to accomplish those innovations, what sort of assistance do you need? And then we came back as a bigger group and discussed key takeaways from those discussions. The second round, we intentionally mixed up the groups. So there were people from various sectors within each group, and we asked two sets of questions. So the first one was, what do you think you already know about extreme heat, and what is still a mystery to you about how heat impacts a community? And then the second set of questions in this round are, what actions would be most impactful for a community or region? And then what criteria are most important in prioritizing an action or research agenda addressing extreme heat? And then again, we came back together and discussed key takeaways from this round. And then we closed out the workshop. So in each breakout room, there was a note taker who took detailed notes, and that is sort of our data that we analyzed to come up with the workshop report. And so we developed a code book, so a list of labels or topics and definitions, and then we applied those labels to all of the notes. So we read through the notes several times and applied the labels to kind of organize all of the topics that people talked about. And then we summarized those discussions within each topic area. And I'll be going over all of the topic areas and then some, again, tangible examples from the workshop report within each topic. And we drafted the report. We have several iterations of it. And as Resham mentioned, it's still kind of being finalized, but the content itself is pretty much set. And so now I'll go into those results. So for the action items, we divided the topics into action and research items. There were over 30 action items among all of the big topic areas, and then 53 research questions. The first big topic was infrastructure. So this included cooling and critical infrastructure. So this could involve AC or power, different it's a pretty broad topic area. And then building for social connection. So people talked about how social isolation was a major risk factor for extreme heat impacts. And so a lot of people mentioned that there should be some sort of building or structure for facilitating social interaction among community members. An example for an action item was to transform the existing built environment into green space or cool space. And a research question for this topic is, what is the prevalence of AC in the region and the use of cooling centers? The next topic was funding. So this was funding processes and mechanisms, so access to funding or funding for specific programs and initiatives. So how can we get funding to these different initiatives that might be able to address extreme heat? An action example here is to use sustainable funding mechanisms for long-term heat solutions. And a research question is, what are the optimal approaches to resource distribution to promote health equity? The next topic was collaboration. So this included equity and community partnerships, and then also collaboration across other sectors or with government agencies. An action item for here is to ensure that partnerships meet community needs. And a research question is, what are the necessary coordination efforts to assist with extreme heat events? And then we have a few more big topics. So for communications, we talked about heat education and risk communications, so sort of pre-event communications and how to educate communities on the risks of extreme heat, and then hazard alerting. So when to alert communities, who to alert, how do we alert them, those kinds of things. And so an action item for this would be to tailor heat alerts to various audiences, so practitioners versus first responders versus the public. And then a research question is, what are the public alerting needs of populations with limited English proficiency? The next topic is workforce capacity. A lot of this surrounded like public health agency literacy in climate change. That was a pretty big topic under this area. And so an action item for this would be to train agency workforce on climate adaptation. And there were actually no research questions associated with this topic, but we wanted to call it out because it was important in the discussions. The next topic is preparedness and response planning. And so an action item for this would be to address social vulnerability in planning. And then a research question was, how can community input be integrated into decision-making and planning for extreme heat? And then the last big topic is heat risks and health impacts. So of course, this kind of was talked about throughout all of the topics, but there were some very specific things that people mentioned that we wanted to bring up in the report. So we also created a separate category for that. And this involved both community health and occupational health, specifically occupations that are most at risk of extreme heat exposure. And so an action item for this would be to establish regulations to proactively protect workers. And a research question is, how does heat interact with air quality and its impact on human health? And I also wanted to mention that equity was really a cross-cutting theme. You probably have seen some of the questions and the action items that kind of center equity. So we don't have a specific topic area because it was just like couldn't figure out how to even separate it from a lot of the topics that are discussed here. So I just wanted to mention that as well. And that is what I have for the report. I will turn it back over to Resham for any questions that you all might have. Thanks.
Thanks, Ashley, for that excellent high-level summary of the report and all your work in pulling it together. For those joining live and also viewing this recording later, we'll post the report and more information about how to stay connected on our webpage, which you can access with this QR code or via the Center for Disaster Resilient Communities website, cdrc.uw.edu.